Hi everyone, this is your host Peter Fenger. Before we dive into today's episode, I have a special announcement. Mark your calendars for the 2025 Fall Wellness Summit, happening on October 18th at 9 a.m. Pacific. This is our final summit of the year and it's completely free. We're bringing together 4 leading heart-centered hypnotherapy experts who will reveal powerful integrative approaches to transform your practice and deepen your impact. Our experts will be covering a variety of topics including rewiring self-worth and identity at a subconscious level, awakening the body's natural healing capacity, supporting nervous system regulation for lasting change, and harnessing sound and frequency for profound transformation. This is your chance to learn directly from the founders of the Wellness Institute, connect with top professionals in the field, and network with a vibrant community of wellness practitioners. Don't miss the final summit of 2025. Register for free at triadhq.com/WSS. We look forward to seeing you there. Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective. Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Peter Fenger, and today I'm joined by Andy Pierce. Andy is a master resilience expert with a master's degree in performance psychology and years of experience helping individuals build mental strength and overcoming adversity. Andy has worked with elite special operations soldiers, Army Rangers, adults in addiction recovery, and resource caregivers, equipping them with essential resilience skills. As a founder of iBounceUp, he's dedicated to empowering at-risk communities with tools they need to navigate life's challenges. We're thrilled to have Andy with us today to discuss the creation of iBounceUp, a nonprofit in Honolulu, Hawaii, dedicated to equipping at-risk communities with the skills to overcome adversity. We'll dive into the core principles of mental resilience, the role of connection and learning, and the 5 pillars that build mental strength. Andy, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
As we start today, I know that iBounceUp serves at-risk communities, but I also know that its creation and the focus has a very personal story. Share with our listeners the story of the creation of your nonprofit organization and also its mission.
Yeah, so I work for the military and I teach resiliency to them. And a friend of ours who has 8 children of her own and has 8 adopted children.
Wow.
So she's a extremely full house, right?
Yeah, that is a very full house.
So it was basically once her children got out of the house, she filled the house back up kind of thing. And anyways, they're good friends of ours. And she came to us and said, hey, you teach resiliency. Do you want to come teach resiliency to some of the caregivers that I work with? And so we said, yeah, of course. We did a training. It was, we had a lot of success. People loved it and they wanted us to come back for more. And that's kind of how this whole training to underserved populations kind of began. So it was a pretty cool experience seeing like growth and people really wanted and needed this information.
Yeah, that's a real opportunity. I know you guys also have somewhat of a personal story with your brother-in-law. How did that element sort of help create this?
Yeah. So what happened was we get this, do this training with the resource caregivers, and my wife was like, hey, let's do this. Let's do a nonprofit. Let's go and, bring this to people that really need it. And we're over here on Oahu. So we're like, okay, there's people here that need it. And, Oahu's known for being sunshine and rainbows, and it's not quite always like that. So everybody's life isn't always like that over here in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And so my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, his name is Matt, and he struggled with alcohol abuse and drugs and was in and out of rehab centers, and he wasn't really getting the training and resources that he needed. So my wife was like, hey, let's build this thing kind of for him to come in and work and give him a job and give him some, some purpose to give back and that kind of thing. And so what ended up happening was we applied for our 501(c), our nonprofit status. And while we were waiting for the status, he ended up passing away. And so it was actually less than a week after he passed away, we received our 501(c). So for us, it was, we wanted him to be with us on earth helping us, but it really felt like he was helping us from the other side, pushing it through. And although it's been extremely hard because he passed away, it's only been about a year and a half. It has been really helpful for my wife and us and our family to have him feel like he's pushing from the other side. And for us, it's been really hard, but healing at the same time.
Yeah, and again, your story is so personal, but it gave you such focus on really who to touch in this. You mentioned that
Hmm.
you're sort of building this program with your brother-in-law with focus, but
Hmm.
it's a very nice legacy for him to have that memory and this sort of perspective and the direction that you guys are going and helping these communities with your brother's spirit sort of in mind.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. And it's been really one of the healing parts for, especially for my wife, because they're very, very close. One of the really cool elements is it's like anytime we find these little successes, right? Like we'll meet these people randomly and they're like, "Oh, I know someone that you can work with." And then we'll connect with them. We end up doing several trainings with them. And every time it's like, "Oh, thank you, Matt." So along the road, we've been like, I can't even count how many times we've been like, "Thank you, Matt."
That's a really nice
Yeah,
legacy for him. So
definitely.
you did mention that you guys are providing mental resilience training to at-risk communities. Can you talk a little bit about how your program works and sort of what are the elements that make it unique?
Yeah. So what we do is we have a 12-week program that we go to different organizations around Hawaii. So most of the places that we're continually working with are rehab centers, sober living units, and many of those are people that just got out of jail, had problems with alcohol abuse. So, right. So they're not allowed to have any type of substance on the property. We've worked with resource caregivers as well, and several, I mean, we work with all these different organizations, right? So, what we do is we teach them 10 different skills or several different skills that help to build resilience. And we teach them 5 different pillars that build resilience. And this comes from the work of Karen Rivich. She's kind of the leading researcher in resiliency. And so we took some of the information that she covers and all this different research. So what we do is we teach these 5 different pillars. First one being awareness or self-awareness, self-control, optimism, flexibility, and relationships. And so between these 5 pillars, we're able to kind of create a whole person to help them understand themselves, understand what they need to do to, be a resilient person, because it's so much more than just our own thoughts, right? It's so much more than just one person. It takes a community to help people. So
Yeah. Yeah. So talking about these five pillars, I'm also aware that you're trying to build up people's relationships with others and really trying to foster that support care system. Maybe you can dive in a little bit about how you're helping people foster different relationships and cultivating this in their
oh yeah.
lives.
Oh, I love that question because connection is one of the most important elements. You know, how many times have you had a bad day, you call a friend and you're like, "Oh, it's not so bad anymore," right? Like,
Yeah.
or something difficult happens in your life and you're able to connect with somebody who can kind of relate with you on that element, and you just feel so much better. Um, and so with a lot of the people that we work with, I've found that building relationships is a skill. And much like any skill, the more you practice that skill, the better you get at it. And one of the pillars that we teach is how to build strong relationships. And One of my favorite skills that we teach comes from the work of from Kelly Gable, and she has created this system in which how people tend to respond. And there's really four ways that people tend to respond, especially when people share good news. So there's four ways
Okay.
that people tend to respond, and one of the ways is builds a relationship, and four tend to not build a relationship or even take away from that
Yeah.
relationship. So the first way that people tend to respond when people share good news is they are distracted. So in other words, it's like they don't seem like they really care about it. It might be that you're like on the phone. It might be like your attention is somewhere else, right? And then how does it make that person feel when they're coming to you with good news or sharing any type of news, right? It's like, oh, okay, that person doesn't care about me, even though they might really care about you. It's just that they're busy, right?
Yeah.
But the message is that, oh, this person doesn't care about me that much.
Okay.
So then another way that takes away from the relationship is someone that they try to relate, but what they do is they end up taking the conversation. So in other words, you're like coming to me with your good news, like, hey, I got a new car. And I'm like, oh, I got a new car, right? And you start talking about your own good news. And again, people do this not because they are trying to like steal the conversation or anything like that. They do it because they're trying to relate. But what ends up happening is it makes that person feel like, oh, okay, you just stole the conversation. I'm coming to you with good news, with like this, my own good news or my own information. You kind of took it away.
Yeah.
And then third way that people tend to respond that takes away from the relationship is that they point out like the negative elements of this thing. So in other words, like your good news is, hey, I got a new car, and your response is like, oh, okay. Oh, why'd you get that color? Oh, that color, like you really see the dirt a lot, like
Yeah.
why'd you get black? Like, oh,
Yeah.
if it gets dirty, like you can see it instantly, it's like you point out the negative things.
Right.
And when people share the good news, they're excited about it, right? And it's this incredible way that like people are showing that they want to connect with you because, in fact, we're actually more selective with
Mm.
who we share our good news with than who we share our bad news with. So when people come to us with good news, it's so important that we respond in not one of these three ways. So let's talk about the most effective way to respond in it. And it's so simple. And usually when we teach this, people are like, oh, of course. And it's just where you're authentically interested in the thing that they're talking about. And really it comes down to just asking questions, right? So same example, right? You say you got a new car, like, oh, that's so exciting. Like, what color did you get? And you tell me, and I'm like, oh, that's so rad. I mean, you must have been saving up. Like, how long did it take you to get this? And you just kind of go through and ask questions and be excited with that person. And what ends up happening is that person feels that much closer to you, and then the likelihood of coming to you with like the news that bad news or hard things that come in their life is increased. So these four different ways, people are like, oh, sometimes when I teach this, people are like, oh man, I'm totally a
Yes,
one
I
of
could see
these three.
myself. Yeah, I could see myself doing these same mistakes. But what you're really laying out, and I appreciate you kind of going through each of these different examples. We're not trying to be malicious. In a way, we're trying to relate, but there can be a better way for us to do it. And ultimately, what it's doing, it's helping us foster that trust and really creating stronger relationships within our lives. I want to ask you maybe a little mind down a little bit further. You gave us the example of when people come to you excited, meet them with questions to sort of foster that excitement. Are there any other cues that you're looking for that might sort of hint that people are trying to share good news with you?
Yeah. I mean, if they're like smiling, right? Like
Yeah.
if they're excited about something, and it
Mhm.
doesn't even matter what it is, right?
Yeah.
People are really selective in who they share their good news with. And
Mhm.
so the second you hear any type of like element of something good happened in their life, that should be kind of your cue to be like, oh, I need to pay attention because this person
Mhm.
selected me. They chose me to share this good news with. And people, like I said, research has shown people are so much more selective on who they share their good news with than who they share their bad news with.
Yeah.
And when I first heard that years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I would have thought the opposite, but that's not what research shows.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, I know we've sort of parked on this one, but there are other elements of resilience, the other pillars that you're mentioning, self-awareness, self-control. Maybe you can mine down a little bit deeper on how you're building your program around some of these other pillars. What sorts of
Yeah.
skills are you teaching them around self-awareness? Let's start with that one.
Yeah. So the foundation of what we teach falls under CBT,
Yes.
how events happen, right? And then we have our thoughts, and our thoughts would drive our emotions and our reactions. So that's the foundation for everything that we teach is we have control over our thoughts. So that is the first thing that we typically come and teach them, right? Is, hey, let's talk about what we have control over. Because oftentimes a lot of these people, they grow up in broken homes, they grow up in really difficult environments.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about what you can control first, right? And recognize that I would say some, I'd say many of the events that happen in your life, they're not your fault,
Yeah.
right? This is just the environment that you grew up in. And so what can we take control over? Because we can take control over the way that we think about those things and interpret them and use them as ways of growth, and use our thinking as ways of learning opportunity, and kind of find meaning in those things. And then
Mm.
another skill that I love to talk about is how our beliefs are like another element
Mm.
that play into the way that we think, right?
Yeah.
So I might have this thought, but why am I thinking this way? We will go to them and we'll talk about, hey, what are the beliefs that are leading to those thoughts? Because my personal opinion is that if you want to change the way that you think, you got to go back to the beliefs that you have, because the
Mm.
beliefs are usually the kind of like the root at which the beliefs come up. And so we have all
Yeah.
these rich discussions. It's like, I wish everybody in the world could have these discussions with us. The world would be a better place, because it's like people don't know this stuff. And for us
Sure.
in the psychology field, like we all know this stuff, right? We
Yes.
all know CBT. We all understand how our thoughts influence our emotions and reactions, but there's so many people out there that just have no idea. And
Yeah.
it's so exciting watching them and teaching them these things.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Whether you're a longtime or first-time listener to Behavioral Health Today, you're probably familiar with Triad, the company that brings you this podcast. But you may not know that Triad also hosts a community for current and aspiring behavioral and mental health professionals, featuring trending content and education and career resources, all for free. If you are a behavioral or mental health professional, or you're studying to become one, join more than 80,000 people on Triad by claiming your free professional account today. Visit us at hellotriad.com/BHT. That's hellotriad.com/BHT, and join the Triad community today.
Yeah, I mean, really, what I like about this approach is one, you're empowering them with the ability to really control their reaction to these things. You're trying to give them meaning, and you're also trying to get them to really think about some of the foundations that they might be building their life on. I know, we've talked about on this show self-core beliefs, and really how if we can really help folks set a stronger foundation, the rest of everything else really comes together. And I think what you're doing in this program is really trying to build some of those. I mean, you're talking about pillars, you're talking about foundation. These are structures that people build healthy lives from. So I love what you're talking about. You're also talking about optimism, flexibility. Talk a little bit about those two pillars and maybe some of the work that you're doing around that.
Yeah. So optimism, we like to call it the engine to being a resilient person, right?
Yes.
Because if you don't have optimism, if you don't have this hope, then it's really hard to build all the other pillars, right?
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about having a growth mindset, teaching them, hey, this is what a fixed mindset looks like. This is what a growth mindset looks like. We talk about how looking for the good, because there's thing that just crushes people called the negativity bias, right? Where we tend to remember the negative things much more than the positive things in our lives.
Yes.
And so we have these conversations and we talk about it and we help them understand that, hey, there's a reason I think negatively sometimes, or all the time in some cases, right? Where our mind will go there. And we talk about how it's a protective factor,
It
right?
is.
It's there to protect us from the negative things that might happen, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes it can get in our way when we only remember the negative things in our life. And so we
Yeah.
teach them to write journals and
Mhm.
to look and write down the good things and to reflect on the good things, because you don't write those things down or think about them, sometimes they'll be gone from your memory forever.
Mm.
Right? And you'll only remember the negative things when there are all these positive things that you just didn't come to your memory.
Yeah, I mean, really going back to our brains are wired for that kind of protection, And again, if you have been going through some incredible challenges, your defenses can get pretty well built up. One of the things that I like about, encouraging these journal and especially trying to highlight maybe the optimism around their days is that when we start to go do those practices, we can rewire our brain to think of those pathways a lot faster. There's really kind of building this momentum again, all in the idea of resilience. This is strength building. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned flexibility. Oh man, flexibility is so important when it comes to being a resilient person, because I could plan out everything I want to do in a day, right?
Mhm.
And if one little kink goes wrong and I don't have flexibility, it's like the day's ruined, right?
Yes.
And we all know people like that, where it's like one little
Mhm.
thing goes wrong and it's like they start catastrophizing, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to flexibility, we teach this way of thinking that it's like, hey, it's okay when things go wrong. It's okay when things don't go as planned. And some of the things we talk about in here is understanding how problems are solved, right? Like, hey,
Mhm.
it's just a problem that we have to get over. We talk a ton about viewing obstacles as obstacles and stepping stones, kind of like climbing a mountain, right? It's like there's hills and valleys. And if anyone's done much hiking, you know that you get to the top of a peak that you think you're at the top of the mountain. And
Mhm.
then you realize, oh, that was the first peak of several. And you look up, you're like, oh, I'm not even close. So, but that's okay, right? Is
Yeah.
to recognize that life is not a perfect path,
Mhm.
and it's all about learning and growing and overcoming and recognizing that life is not going to go as planned, and that's okay. And
Mhm.
you just keep chugging forward.
Yeah, we go through life and we get banged up. That's what
Yeah.
happens, and everybody sort of goes through the same experience. But it can be such a nice reminder that when we go through challenges, we don't have to have answers always. I know from my own experience, when I start to have that thinking, it raises my anxiety and it just causes a number of problems. But when I can get down to the level where I can start to ask questions, that starts to build a stronger foundation for me to overcome this obstacle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Oh, it's so important. I love that too.
So I know you were involved in a serious surfing accident and it required months of recovery. First, I want you to share your experience, what that was like with our listeners. And secondly, as you sort of reflect on these 5 pillars, did it give you a greater appreciation for one element of resilience over another?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I got a scar on the front of my neck. I broke my neck. And I was very fortunate and unfortunate, right? Because I still broke my neck, but I was fortunate in regards to my spinal cord was not damaged. So I was able to use my arms and legs. And I had my right arm was weak, but I'll kind of go through and tell you what happened. So
Yeah, tell me.
uh, I'm an avid surfer. I've been surfing my whole life, and I live on the North Shore of Oahu.
Yeah.
And so the waves get really big here if you don't know. And I was surfing on a pretty good sized day. The waves were probably around 15 feet or so. And I caught a wave. I got to the bottom of the wave and I looked up and the whole thing was closing out. So I did what I had done 1,000 times. I jumped forward head first. It's like a technique that all surfers use. And what happened was the water got really tight, kind of like if you've ever been on a jet ski or a boat, the water, the faster you go, the water feels tight. Well, when the water's moving, it gets really tight. And so what happened was my arm and shoulder penetrated the water and my head didn't. And so my head got
Oh,
pushed to the side and I knew instantly I was hurt. I was like, just from hitting the water. And I felt a ton of pain in my right arm. I thought I broke my arm. And so underwater, I'm feeling my arm and I'm like, wait, it's not broken. I remember thinking, okay, I must have torn some muscle or tendon. And I'm feeling my arm while underwater still. I'm assessing the damage because there's just so much pain. And I'm like, wait, I can't feel it. My arm feels fine. I'm like confused at this point.
yeah.
And I come up, that was all under the first wave. And I come up and I see two more really big waves, walls of whitewash come and just mow me down. I'm underwater getting thrashed around. And luckily, after two waves, the waves stopped. I was able to one arm paddle to the channel. Luckily, the North Shore lifeguards, who are incredible, had a jet ski that happened to be in the area. We were waving at the lifeguards at the tower on the beach. And I think what they did is called the jet ski and they came,
Yeah.
took me straight to the beach. I was able to get on the ski, went straight to the beach. And I went and I was driving myself to the hospital. I called my wife and I'm like, hey, I hurt myself really bad. I'm not exactly sure what happened, where I'm hurt. I just know I'm hurt. And she's like, well, pull over. I was like, I'm good. I got this. Let's just get to
Oh
the
my
hospital.
God.
So like at this
Wow.
point, I didn't know my neck was hurt
Yeah.
until about halfway to the hospital.
Oh,
I adjusted with my head, like in your chair, you'll do that,
yes.
right?
Mhm.
And I did that and I felt a ton of pain in my neck. I was like,
Oh,
instantly, I was like, oh no. I was like, I think I broke my neck.
oh,
And then it was right at that point I realized like my hand's not just hurt, it's numb.
mm,
So like my right index finger and my I think it was just my right index finger and my thumb were almost fully numb. I was like, oh no. And I started putting things together. So I get to the hospital, they do a CT scan. They're like, your C7, which is the bottom of your neck, is cracked, and maybe your C6 or is fractured. And I'm like, oh gosh. So that's a small hospital in Kukuku where I went. And then they sent me to one of the bigger hospitals at Castles in Kailua. And they did a MRI and looked at the CT scan and they're like, yep, you hurt yourself pretty good. You got a very herniated disc that's pushing on a nerve that's causing the numbness in your hand. And so I ended up getting surgery where they fused my C6 and C7 together. And right after surgery, the doctor came in. He's like, hey, it's a good thing we did surgery because you had a bunch of bone fragments that were like pushing onto your nerve. So it was like, yeah. And I was debating whether I should do surgery. And that's a whole nother story that I can get into another day. But
yeah.
yeah, so ended up having surgery. And that was actually only on February 7th. And I'm still recovering. I can move and my numbness is almost all gone in my hand. My strength
Yeah.
is coming back. So it was quite a healing process that I'm still going through. So.
Yeah, I mean, that is quite a journey. Again, you talk about your brother-in-law showing up. Here's your brother-in-law giving you a real rescue out there in the waves. Wow, that is
Oh
a
yeah.
harrowing story. I mean, and
Yeah.
you talk about mental resilience. There's an example of physical resilience from our bodies. Being able to drive yourself after a fracture in your neck and even having sort of the pressure in your nerves and being able to drive yourself to the hospital like that, man, that our bodies are pretty incredible.
Oh, definitely. You know what's crazy about it too is I'm in the hospital, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like laid up. This before surgery and after surgery. I had this neck brace on before surgery. After surgery, they didn't require a neck brace. And I kept thinking about like all the things that we talked about today.
Yeah.
Resiliency. I'm thinking about how my thoughts are impacting my emotion. And I noticed I was like, there's two ways that, pretty severe injuries will go as far as the way that we think.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, I could get really bitter right now. I could go down that path. I
Sure.
could go down the why me, why this happened. My wife and I had a trip planned to Korea. All our tickets were bought, like
Oh
it was
my.
happening
Yeah.
2 weeks before
Oh.
this accident. So we had to
Oh.
cancel everything.
Oh.
It was just so many things that were happening in our life had to just go on hold.
Yeah.
And I just noticed my mind could go down this negative path, right? Where for me, I could easily get bitter.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, I'm not going to go down that path. I get to decide. Like no one else decides. And I chose the path of looking for the little miracles that I experienced. I went down the path of being so grateful for all the friends that showed up, the meals that people were giving, my wife by my side the whole time, and my kids like writing me, sending me texts and notes and coming to visit. And
Hmm.
it's crazy through this whole thing, which again, it's been just over a month. I have only felt grateful and connected to friends that I hadn't felt connected to in a really long time. Because I got messages from friends that I haven't talked to in 10 years.
Yeah.
They're like,
Wow.
"Hey, I heard about your accident. I just want you to know I'm thinking about you and praying for you," and all these different things. And it was crazy. I was like, how come through this whole terrible thing, I only feel good, even though it's
Hmm.
physically terrible?
Yeah.
So we really do have a choice in the way that we feel, which has been a pretty cool experience through this painful experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're using all of those tools right there. You're self-aware about the emotions that you can feel. You're having some agency and control over it. You're using optimism around it. You're trying to be flexible and letting life sort of unravel as it's supposed to. And then your relationships are coming back in waves. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. What's cool too is I um I work with these youth that are in a rehab center. Okay, so these are like they're kids. They're like in between 12 and 17, and they're in this live-in rehab center. So there's not a ton to do all the time, right? Sometimes I think they get a little bored because they're like a lot of their freedoms are taken away. I went and met with them for a little bit, and I remember it was pretty soon after the surgery, and I could barely move, and I wasn't gonna go, but then it was like, oh, my wife could drive me there, and it's really close to my house, so I'm like, what, I'll go and talk to these guys just for a really short amount of time, for like about 45 minutes or so. So I was like, I can do that. So we go over there, and instantly they see like something's wrong with him. Like every time he moves, he's like this. And they're like, "Hey, like you're injured? Like what happened?" And I tell them the whole story, and they these kids that I had always tried to show compassion for them are now turning it, and they're showing compassion to me.
Mhm.
And I had this moment talking to them where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like." These kids, like, they care about me, right? Like, sometimes you're like, "I don't know." Like, you think
Yeah.
they do, but
Hmm.
you don't really know.
Yeah.
Sometimes with kids, they're not really, like, vocal with those kinds of things, and
Sure.
it was just really cool experience where now I almost felt like they were, like, caring for me in this moment,
Mm.
and it felt really cool and felt we were all connected, and it just was like proof that what we're doing is working and helping. So
Yeah, well, you said sort of at the beginning of the show about how, if we can all sort of do this work, I'll make the world a better place. When you're really, I mean, you're approaching this from a huge point of perspective of compassion, and you're really seeing it show through, compassion breeds compassion. So this is sort of the work that you're doing coming back in fold. We call it karma or other ways, but yeah, that's a really cool thing to witness.
yeah, it was pretty unique. It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask, being located in Honolulu, Hawaii, Do you ever incorporate maybe some of the cultural aspects of Hawaii? I know that the spirit of aloha really, shows in waves throughout these communities. Do you ever incorporate any of those practices in some of the classes that you're teaching?
Kind of. And what I
Yeah,
mean
tell
by
me.
that is, so I didn't grow up in Hawaii. I moved here. It's been since 2007, and I was off the island for a little bit. But it's been I've been here for a while, so I do know some of obviously the customs within Hawaii, because it is a very different place than the rest of the United States. And so what I like to do is ask them how they like to incorporate that into their own resilience. And part of Hawaii is the Hawaiian people is that they love, and I have grown to love this too, is they take care of the land. And that taking care of the land gives them meaning, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like littering in Hawaii is you don't do it. Like and I know in most of the United States, like you don't do it either way, but here in Hawaii, like you do not do that, right?
Yeah.
And so watching a lot of these youth like really taking care of the land in their own way and taking care of their people. And something that I have found, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Hawaiian people, but this is my own like view of how Hawaii is different than the United States or a lot of parts of the United States, I would say, or the mainland, is that it still has that communal feel, right? So we take care of the land, we take care of the people.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these people can recognize that value that a lot of Hawaii really, really feels strongly about. And that means I need to take care of myself.
Mm.
Because when you, a saying that my wife and I like to say that when you change one person, you change a community.
Mm.
If that person goes back to the community and they make a difference with the people that they interact with, right? So when they are able to recognize like, hey, I need to take care of myself to take care of my people and my family and my friends and the people that I associate with, I think that element becomes really, really important. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's special. And again, you talk about how making a difference in one person's life can make a difference in community. I want to ask you about some of the hallmark stories. I know you've worked with a lot of folks. What are some of the most powerful transformations you've witnessed? Is there a hallmark story that sort of comes to mind?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that. That's a great question. That's my favorite question actually, because
Tell us.
there, there's there was this kid that we worked with, and he's young. He was 13 years old, and he had been at one of these rehab centers that we had been working with, and we had been there. I think we had worked with him for about 2 months, and his time was up. He was going back home, and he like gives us hugs. He's like, "Hey, thank you so much for everything you've taught me." And he as he's walking away, he turns around and he goes, "I know you guys care, and that means a lot to me." And then he left. And it was crazy because like in that moment, it was so special for me and my wife because sometimes again when working with youth, you're like, I'm telling you a lot of information. You are telling me a lot of information, but you just don't know if it's sticking
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do, right?
Mhm.
And this was one of those kids that it was like, like you get it.
Yeah.
He's like, and I think again, it's the connection. It's like sometimes we teach them all this information. We teach them all this stuff that's gonna help their life. But it's the connection with those kids or with those adults or with whoever you're working with that really ends up being the thing that helps them want to change.
Yeah.
And we've had several stories kind of like that where people come back and
bet.
they're like, hey, you're consistent. I think that's the big thing, right? Is we keep coming.
Mm.
And we went for a year and a half with no grants and nothing, right? So we're just going and
Yeah, you
we're
guys
just
are.
going and going and going.
Mm.
And because we saw the need and we saw the thing that really this makes a difference. And so yeah, that I think
Yeah,
that story was it just burned in my mind, I think,
yeah.
forever.
No, that's a beautiful story. I mean, for him to summon the courage to be vulnerable and share with you about, his feelings and about how you guys are really showing up and becoming a source of stability in maybe a tough life. That's special. I
Yeah.
can imagine that there's a real connection there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. It was
yeah.
cool.
Well, Eddie, as we sort of wrap up our show today, I want to ask if somebody is listening today and is facing adversity, what's one small but meaningful step that they can take to start strengthening their resilience? Leave us with a sort of a final message.
Yeah, again, that's such a great question. I think that being flexible
Mm.
is going to be one of my favorite things that we can do. We get caught up in life, right? Things happen to us. We think things should be a certain way. And when they're not, because they almost always aren't, it's okay. And to tell yourself that, hey, it's okay. I'm going to be okay. The way that we talk to ourselves matters and it will affect the way that we feel. So being flexible, just be flexible with your friends, be flexible with yourself, be flexible with your children if you have kids, be flexible with your parents if you have parents, right? Like be flexible with people because we're a whole bunch of imperfect people trying to get through an imperfect world.
Yeah.
And I think that element is what relieves a lot of stress on ourselves and on the people that we love.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, even just being able to really cultivate that space for flexibility, it's tough. But when we think of, maybe like our anxiety and the space of everything going right, in between there is this space of creativity. Sometimes people call it like playing jazz with life. Sometimes we can just execute or sort of flex that muscle of flexibility, we're able to sort of flow through some of life's challenges in a different way. I mean, it just gives us an element of curiosity and kind of puts us in that headspace to allow a little bit more optimism.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I would love for you to share with our listeners where they can follow up with iBounceUp, how they can get involved. I know you guys are also offering donations on your website. Even if there's a community that might be listening, how can they get involved in maybe just acquiring your programs? Tell us where we can learn more.
Yeah. So we have a website and it's iBounceUp.com. So iBounceUp.com. If you want to donate, we love donations to keep this going. I mean, we're gonna make it this, but yeah, so iBounceUp.com. That's where you can learn a little bit more about what we're doing. We have success stories on there. We have a newsletter that we put out every month.
Mhm.
And so you can learn more about us there. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I'll sort of encourage our listeners to go and check it out. There's resources on there as well as other ways that you can connect with them. Andy, I really appreciate your time today. This was a lot of fun. Thank you very much for coming on to our show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's been
Yeah,
great. Thanks for
yeah.
having me.
And I want to thank you, our listeners, for taking the time to join us. You can follow us on our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Behavioral Health Today. And if you like our show, give us 5 stars and leave us a review. That helps our show get discovered and share the valuable insights in each episode. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today. We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.